What's up, peeps? Nothing can take your breath away like a meticulously choreographed time-lapse of the Milky Way. But there's a lot more to shooting a Milky Way time-lapse than simply pointing your camera at the sky and shooting pictures. There's a lot of things that need to take place. We need to know when the moon is going to rise and when it's going to set. We need to know where the Milky Way is going to be in the sky when it rises and when it sets. We also need to set our composition correctly and then dial in our settings just right to make it turn out good. And I'm going to show you how I do it. There is no better coffee than coffee on a crispy, cool morning in the woods. So before I chose tonight is the night to shoot a time-lapse of the Milky Way, I needed to understand when the moon was going to rise and when it was going to set. Because nothing will ruin a time-lapse of the stars faster than light pollution from the moon. There's many moon calendars that you can find online. I like to use timeanddate.com, and with that I can see on today's date that the moon is going to set at 8:21 p.m. I can also use timeanddate.com to see when the sun's going to set, which happens to be at 6:28 p.m. That's important to me because I don't want to shoot any earlier than 2 hours after the sunset because I don't want any light pollution coming from the sun. So before I picked today's date, I also needed to know when the center of the Milky Way would pass below the horizon. There's an app I like to use, it's called Star Chart. It's a nominal amount of money, I don't remember exactly how much it was, but for me it was well worth it. You might be able to find an app that's cheaper that is for free. But for me, with Star Chart, I can determine where any celestial object will be at any date and time. So with these tools I've shown you, I've been able to determine that on today's date, the sun will set at 6:30 and the moon will set at 8:15. With Star Chart, I was able to determine that the center of the Milky Way will be in the southwestern sky 2 hours after sunset at 8:15, and it will start setting in the western sky about 11:30 p.m. With this knowledge, I know I need to have my camera pointed towards the southwestern to the western part of the sky in order to capture the Milky Way moving across the sky from 8:15 to 11:30 at night. A couple weeks ago, when I was planning shooting this time-lapse, I knew exactly when to shoot and which way to point the camera at the night sky in order to capture the Milky Way just perfectly. But I still needed to know where the ideal location would be to shoot this time-lapse. I already knew I wanted to shoot over a body of water to get the reflection of the stars to get a cool composition. I needed to find a spot to shoot over a body of water over the southwestern sky without getting any light pollution from any cities or towns. To figure this out, I used lightpollutionmap.info to find some dark sky by a body of water where I could shoot towards the southwest. And as you can see, there's a lot more light pollution on the east coast than there is on the west coast, so I thought I had it hard, but then I looked at the east coast and I can see that finding a place with very little light pollution is very difficult there. But Over here by Phoenix, you can see there's a big portion over here in the Sigreads National Forest that doesn't have very much light pollution. There's this small town of Payson, but it doesn't look like that big of a deal. So I knew I wanted to shoot here, and I knew I wanted to shoot by a body of water. There's quite a few lakes up in this area, and I chose this one right here, Bear Canyon Lake. So at Bear Canyon Lake, I knew I could set up on this east side and be able to shoot over the lake to the southwest western side and have it be plenty dark for me to shoot the Milky Way. So we have about an hour to sunset, and I'm going to start shooting the time lapse 2 hours after that. And so right now, while there's still light out, I need to be able to find the best composition. I'm shooting towards the south and southwestern portion of the sky. I want to keep the Milky Way in the frame, of course, from 8:15 to 11:30, and I think this spot will be perfect because I'll get just the right amount of reflection off of the lake with the stars. So I brought Seema up here to shoot this time lapse because she's going to keep me company while the camera's rolling. So I've already picked up my composition. I know where I want to point the camera. I'm going to be figuring out the settings a little bit. Look at that ridiculous dog. Okay, so it's getting close to 8:30, and I took my first shot. I wanted to try it with a 7.1 aperture and just see how it looked. I was really hoping to get a sharper image in the reflection of the lake. It's looking like a 7.1 aperture isn't going to do it, even at 15 seconds. So I'm going to have to make an adjustment here and take another shot. In this shot, I had the shutter set at 25 seconds. The aperture is set at f4, the lowest this particular lens can go. And then I have my ISO set at 2500. And that looks like the best combination for this. I'm going to keep playing with it a little bit. I really like this composition, but if you look over to the right, that's where the very right hand part of this photo is where the Milky Way is going to set, and it's going to be obscured by these trees. So I want to move to a different spot and try again and see how that looks. Alright, so in this shot, same settings, 25-second shutter and f4 aperture with a 2500 ISO. I really like the idea of getting something in the foreground, and so I moved to a different spot, and I got this tree in the foreground. Now I'm beginning to think that I don't want any of the sky obscured by a foreground object. I don't know, I could be wrong though. Having that in the foreground during a night lapse could be really cool. But I think for this particular shoot, I wanted to have the sky completely clear. So I'm going to go ahead and move, and then I'm going to take another shot. It looks like this is going to be our winning composition. This is 25 seconds of shutter. It's at an f4 aperture. We have 2500 on the ISO, and any noise that produces I'll be able to fix in post. You can see in the upper left hand corner, that's where the center of our Milky Way is, and by the time this time lapse stops, which will be approximately 11:30, it will be over in that upper right hand corner, and I was able to determine that using the tools that we discussed before. Yeah, this is the winner. So we're gonna go with this. I'm gonna start shooting, and I really hope it turns out. I think we got it. I think it's gonna turn out good, but we won't find out until we run it in post. That's next. Alright, we're home. It's time to go ahead and load up the photos, process them, turn them into a movie, and play them back and see how good we did. Let's get into it. Alright, so first thing we want to do is go import. We click import, you'll want to find the files that you uploaded off of your camera onto your computer. And so I'm gonna go photos, I'm gonna go EOS RP, I'm gonna go to, here we go, Mogion RAM, and we're gonna go to raw time-lapse photos. Let's bring all those up. And while those are coming up, I wanna go ahead and mention that if you're serious about any photo, and in particular time-lapse, you wanna shoot your photos in raw. That way you have a lot more ability to adjust contrast, color, highlights, lowlights, so on and so forth. With a JPEG, you don't have that kind of flexibility. So if you're really serious about how your picture's gonna look, make sure you go ahead and shoot it in RAW. And oh, just heads up, that noise you keep hearing in the background, that's my dog, Seema. She keeps going in and out of the dog door. That's what she likes to do when I record. I think it kind of trips her out that I'm talking to a camera and not another person or an animal, so she'll get all nervous and start going in and out the dog door. But anyways, back to business. So we've pulled up all of our photos here. There's a whole bunch of them, and it looks like some of them I don't actually want to import, so I'm gonna uncheck those. And if your photos aren't checked, you could always click the check all button down here. Basically what you're doing is you're checking all photos that you want to import into Lightroom. Now, I remembered that I shot one photo where I lit up the lake with my flashlight before I started the time lapse, and that's this one here. So everything before that, I don't need to import. So I'm gonna uncheck all of those. Okay, so I've unchecked all the photos that I know I don't want. So now let's go ahead and import them. So everything's checked, ready to import, click the import button, and this is gonna take a while. So go ahead and shoot another time lapse, get a snack, whatever you want. It's gonna take a while to get over 300 raw photos imported into Lightroom. Okay, so that didn't actually take very long, and it took about 60 seconds. So good deal. All right, so now we have all of our previews inside of Lightroom. So now we want to go to develop. Now, of course, we don't want to go through and develop each of these 300 some odd photos. So what you want to do is you want to pick the first one and develop that. I'm not going to get too crazy with this. First thing that I see is the sky's kind of bright. I want to make it darker. So I'm going to up the contrast a bit. There we go. Oh yeah, that's nice. And then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to change the hue. I don't like the yellow hue. When I'm shooting stars, I really like more of a space kind of look. And so what I'll do is I'll take the hue, I'll move it up kind of towards the purple a little bit. Nice. And then I want to take the temperature and I want to cool it down. Oh baby, yes, right there. Perfect. All right, so let's head in a little bit of clarity. Everything else is kind of personal, what your personal choices are, what you want it to look like. One thing I do want to take care of is you can see that there's a bit of noise in the background. So I want to take care of a little bit of that. Oh, I also want to take care of profile correction on my lens. On this particular lens shooting at 24 millimeters, there will be some vignetting in the corners of the photo, and that's basically where you'll see the corners of the photos will be darker than the center. And so I went ahead and corrected that. Here we go, noise reduction. I'm just gonna bump it up a little bit. It's not gonna be perfect, but as you can see, that looks a lot better than, say, that. And we zoom out, you can't see any noise at all at that point. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave it like this. I really like what that looks like right there. I will be doing more editing in Premiere Pro, and I'm gonna show you how to do that in a minute. But first, I wanna show you how you get this color adjustment and all the other adjustments I made on all of your photos that you imported. So we did the first one here, and it's highlighted, and I'm happy with how that looks. So let's go to our last photo. And we're gonna hit Shift and click that. That will highlight all of your photos between the first one you adjusted and the last one you just clicked while holding down the Shift key. Now, we can hit the sync button. The sync button is going to say, okay, what all do you want to synchronize with all these photos? Well, everything. You don't want them to look different at all. And let me double check here. Okay, I got my lens corrections, I got my tone, exposure, highlights, everything. We're looking good. So let's go ahead and synchronize those. And that actually doesn't take very long, as you can see. It's syncing them right now. Here pretty soon, every single photo that we imported will have all of those adjustments that we made on that first photo. And boom, there we go. So now every photo you click will have those exact same adjustments on it. So we have, let's see how many photos. We have 347 photos. They all have the same adjustment set to them. Now it's time to go ahead and export them. So what you want to do is go to the library. Here we go. All of our photos are still highlighted, which is great. That's exactly what we want. And you can see the computer's catching up here and showing the adjustments that we made to all the photos. So they're all highlighted. We have our export button here. Let's go ahead and click that. And one thing you want to make sure of is make sure you have the quality as high as possible. And then you select what photo you want to put, or you select what folder you want to put these in. Click export. Preparing to export, and up here it says export 347 files. So that definitely is going to take a long time. You can go ahead and shoot another time lapse. You can go ahead and get a snack. You can mow the lawn. You can do a lot of things. I happen to have some yard work to do, so I'm going to go ahead and do that while this is exporting the 347 files, and then we'll pick up from there. Okay, so our photos have finished exporting from Lightroom. So I pulled up Adobe Premiere Pro and I created a new project, and I called it Milky Way Time Lapse. So here we are in the new project. First thing we want to do is import the photos that we just exported from Lightroom. So here's all of our photos that we've exported. So in order to import all the photos into basically a video into Premiere Pro, what you want to do is select the first photo, and then you want to click Image Sequence and Open. And it's going to go ahead and import all those files. Here they are. So it's imported all of those photos and it's made a video out of it, about 11 seconds worth. So let's go ahead and move that down to the timeline. And here we go, it's on the timeline. Now, if I try to play it back, it's probably going to be pretty rough. Yeah, it's really rough. And that's because these file sizes are huge. So there's a couple things I want to do here. First thing is, whenever you pull something down, the first item, I should say, that you pull down into your sequence down here, your overall project is going to match whatever that item is in terms of resolution and aspect. So we want to change that. So I'm going up here to Sequence, and I'm going to Sequence Settings, and I want to go ahead and change this to 24 frames per second. There we go. And up here, it's 6240 by 4160. We want to make this video 4K, and we'll change that to 3840. And then our horizontal, we're going to change to 2160. All right, 3840 by 2160, otherwise known as 4K. So I'm going to click OK, and changes to preview, yada yada yada, that doesn't matter. Okay, so we've changed it to 4K now, and what you'll see is we have a crop on our overall video, because the original size, of course, is much larger than 4K. So I'm going to right click my video file here, and I'm going to choose Scale to Frame Size. Now you'll be able to see that the photo there is actually a different size in terms of aspect than the 4K that we've set our sequence file to. So to fix that, it's pretty easy. In the editing tab, go ahead and increase the scale a bit until it fits, and I like that. And that's pretty nice in the respect that it gives us some leeway on, do we want to include more stars or do we want to include more reflections? In this case, I just want the dark shadow to be of the trees over here to be about a third of the way up the frame for a good composition. And it looks like this will do it. So now every single photo again is put into a movie. And we've adjusted the size of the video, we've adjusted how it looks in the frame. Now I want to go ahead and export it. And the reason I want to do that is this is very jittery when I try to play it back, if it plays back at all. And that's because Premiere Pro is literally trying to take each photo, put it into 24 frames per second, and play it back to you. So let's go ahead and export this. Okay, so now we've taken our photo sequence, we've rendered it and exported it, and you can see where I've re-imported it into the program, and that's it right here. So now that I have that, I no longer need the photos in the sequence. I'm gonna go ahead and delete those, and then we're gonna add our exported photos that are now a video in here, and we certainly don't need the sound on this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the entire clip, click Control-L, which delinks the sound. I'm going to click the sound and click Delete. So now we're just working with the video file, and with this video file, now we can finally look at our time lapse and see how it looks. And it looks pretty good. I like it. You can see some light flickering in the background. I went on a Saturday, so there's a lot of people around with flashlights and whatnot. Oh, there's a lot at the end. So we need to cut that out. Let's go ahead and, whoop, there we go. Oh yeah, that's really bad. So I'm gonna back that up. It looks like the very first, there it is. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the clip there. And let's go ahead and review it one more time. Alright, that looks good. There's still some flickering in the background, but that's expected considering I went up on a Saturday and there's a lot of people up there. So I still want to make a few adjustments to the color on this, and the first adjustment I want to make is I want to give it just a slightly more of a purplish tint and cool it down just a tad more. There we go, I think that looks great. I'm gonna bump up the saturation just a little bit. And there we go, that's fantastic. So I'm happy with all of the Lumetri color adjustments. So the biggest adjustment we're gonna make is using the unsharp mask. And the unsharp mask, let's go to the editing tab here. You can find that, I'm gonna go ahead and minimize these items. You can find that by clicking in the search in your effects panel, unsharp. And you have to spell it right in order for it to work. Unsharp, there we go. And I'm gonna go ahead and bring that on to the effect controls. So the unsharp mask doesn't actually make your video unsharp. You use it to sharpen your videos. And it has a default here. We have an amount of 50, we have a radius of 1, and a threshold of 0. I'm not going to go through and explain each one of those settings individually because I really could make a whole video that would take quite a bit of time just on the unsharp mask alone. What I am going to show you though is what I use to make these stars pop. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the amount, I'm going to pull it all the way up to we'll leave it at 290. That's pretty good. And as you can see, the stars are now starting to pop. The radius, I'm going to switch to 2.1. Now you can see the stars are popping a little too much, so maybe I'll back that down here in a little bit. But the biggest thing you'll notice is we have a lot of noise in the frame now. And that's where the threshold slider comes in. The threshold slider basically determines how much of our image do we want the sharpness applied to. And of course, we don't want the sharpness applied to everything because that'll create the noise. So to fix that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and zoom into this particular image by 150%, get nice and close to that noise. As you can see, that's really ugly. I'm gonna move my threshold slider to the right just a little bit. And you can see that's starting to make a difference. Let's move it a little bit more. That looks pretty good, but I wanna move it more. That'll do it. Now that still looks really ugly, and that's because we're zoomed in 150%. Let's go ahead and set that frame size to fit, and it fits now. And there's no noise. There's a tiny bit of noise over here in the corner, but that's hardly even noticeable. As far as the stars, they're pretty bright. I think I want to back that down a little bit, and so we're going to take unsharp mask down to 270. That looks pretty good. So just for fun, I'm going to show you the difference. This is without the unsharp mask, and this is with the unsharp mask. As you can see with stars, it makes a huge difference, and it's an excellent tool to really have your stars pop. This is ready to go. There's one other thing I want to do. I originally said I didn't mind the noise that's in that bottom left corner, but now it's actually starting to bother me. So I'm gonna go ahead and reduce my shadows just a tad. I'm gonna up my contrast a little bit. There we go, that's much better. All right, so this is good, I like it. I'm ready to go ahead and export it. Okay, so that file's been rendered and exported, and here we go. Let's take a look. I like it. That looks really good. You can still see it's a little bit jittery on playback. That's because of my computer. It'll look just fine once it's imported into a file project and viewed on a TV or something else. There you go. That's how you put together a Milky Way time lapse, or at least that's how I put together a Milky Way time lapse. As always, if you have any questions, put them down in the comments. If you like this video, hit the like button, let me know. And if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. That's all I got. I'm out.